Hello, scholars. In this video, we're going to create some basic overlays using Canva. While it might be great if you can pay for a designer to create them for you, if you happen to be on a budget, making them on your own can work. Additionally, even if you do have a design team, knowing what specs to ask for or pay for can be important. So let's dive in. For this walkthrough, we're going to practice as if we're doing a basic small online esports tournament. So we'll start by making a list of all the scenes that we want to create. As we dive in, the first part would be a starting soon screen that probably has a timer, which would be helpful. So we'll need an opener of some sort. Next, we'll probably want a game caster's space where we could have a side-by-side for both of our casters. And we'll probably want a scene for a bracket. You'll see these often as scenes with ones with schedules, especially if there are multi-day events. For practice, we're also going to insert a promo video, and this is important if you have sponsors or want to promote a future project, or perhaps you're raising funds for a charity and want to share an informational video about them. Now, of course, we'll actually need a scene of the actual gameplay, bringing in video with at least one player. We'll also bring our casters back for, let's say, a gameplay commentary, a two picture-in-picture sort of situation. And if we're extra, because of course we are, we'll do a post-game interview with maybe a team captain. And finally, we'll need an ending or a thank you for watching scene of sort. Now in Canva, I've mocked up some examples as a video project. The video project will give me a little more flexibility to download some assets as an MP4 or as a PNG. Versus if you just do it as a presentation, you won't be able to download it as an MP4. So small little tidbit. You don't have to use Canva, but this is going to be an easy tool that has many free assets that you can use. For my starting point, I want to choose my starting soon screen first. I'm going to create it all together to get a sense of what it looks like. I like to opt for a video that makes it a little bit more dynamic. So here I've used a template, right, that actually draws from 3 templates. One is where I pulled the background video, another one where I got the inspiration for the text, and then a third for the mock-up of my logo. I make them all adjusted a little way to make them work for me, but it helps me to create something that I know will look good. Now be careful with choosing a background video that is flashy. Remember, this is a background video. It's not the most important thing. The key thing to keep in mind with your video is if it loops nicely. If it doesn't, it can be very obvious to your viewers. If you have a non-looped video, meaning that it doesn't seamlessly replay into itself, then you will have to move on to the next scene as soon as it's done. That video will determine how long you can stay on that scene. However, if you need some flexibility, such as having a few more seconds to minutes, not knowing exactly when you're going to start, a looped video will make it less obvious that your video is starting over. Here, I've also chosen to add the basic text outline, so that way it pops from the background and makes it a little bit more readable, and I've put my generic logo in the bottom right corner. I've left some space in the middle for a reason, as I want to add an eventual timer over on the OBS side. When I download this, I will want to download this page separately as a video, this whole slide all together as an MP4. Now next, we need to work on our caster scene. I've done a full mock-up first, so that way I know what I want this scene to look like in the end. I've even added in a temporary picture to help me visualize. Obviously, she will not be coming over with me and I'm putting her into OBS. This is just to make sure that the picture looks good and I have a good framing around whoever's face happens to be there. Now, when I look at this looks great. I will now need to pull these sources out separately so I can construct them and move them the way that I want to in OBS. So let's pull these out. First, we'll start with our background video. This allows me to use it in any scene, not just, of course, our commentator scene or our caster scene. So I'll pull this out and I've got my logo in the top right corner. This will be a simple video on its own that I download as an MP4. Then, after that, I will pull out each frame on its own. These I will download as a separate PNG. Now the original frame was too bright, so I hopped over to the editing tool and I lowered the brightness down to -65. Remember, with these assets, from the text you choose, the colors you select, you want it to be about audience readability. Does it seem engaging? If it's too bright and painful to look at, they won't want to look at it, right? Same with names. If they're too tiny or too fancy to read, they won't read it. So find things that work for you. Remember, when I download these, I will need to download them as transparent PNGs, where I remove the white background. In Canva, you will need the paid version to do this. However, you can also use other background remover tools, such as if you're already paying for Adobe, to accomplish this. So we have our Caster 1 name, and then we have our Caster 2 name. If I were Caster 2, that wouldn't say Caster 2 name, it would say Caustic Phoenix instead. And then we would have our assets to download. Next, I've mocked up my bracket scene. I wanted a new background, a nice flash with animation, but still pulling in that same color of blue that we had before. See the animation box if you need to, of course, adjust or play around with any of those features that you want in Canva. Now, as we pull it out, again, separating these assets, we have first our alternative background video. I pull this out separate so that way I can use it whenever I want. And after that, then I have my bracket. I know you can't see it. You have to trust me that it's there. It's a white bracket on a white screen, but when the background mover happens and I have it as a transparent PNG, you will see the bracket. Trust me on the process here. Again, I've separated out each source. The things with movement I will need to download as videos, and that which is static, like my bracket here, should be a PNG. Now, I am choosing to leave my bracket blank so I can add the team names later in OBS. This will save me the process of having to come back into Canva, updating the names, and then re-uploading it to OBS every single time there is progression. So after this, of course, then as our placeholder, I've put together a fake promo video, just some silly assets as a placeholder for practice. You don't have to do this, but if you want to practice putting in a video, this is always a good choice. Now, after we do a video like this, if we were doing a run-o show, we'd probably go back to our casters and the side-by-side. And then after that, we would announce the first game matchup. So that's when we would go with our more designed option at this point. Here it is, the versus generic team 1 versus generic team 2. I would download this all as is. I don't want to change anything, so this will be, just like our starting soon screen, a video. I've used the same look and design as our bracket, so that way it still feels cohesive. And we're reintroducing the elements so that way it's not just used once. Notice that I've kept our logo in the corner for each scene, just so that way it stays branded. Now we get into the gameplay. For simplicity, we'll break this down from a one-person point of view, but I also have a setup for a side-by-side. Again, here we'll pull things out separately. Already, because of some of the work we've already done, we have that background video, so we don't have to pull everything out at this point because we'll have it. What we do need, of course, and here's an example of the side-by-side should you want to do it. Look at the balance, good consistency, nice readability, cameras facing inward. Isn't that good, Caustic? Yes, it is good. I'm glad you pointed that out. So keep this point as inspiration, but as you pull out your pieces, you'll notice, right, we have our gameplay. We need to pull that out separately so that way we have something that frames our game. We'll also want to have our team name. So I have generic team name 1 listed out there. And of course, for our player name, where maybe if their name was Shattered, I'd put Shattered there instead. And that way I can export each of those to make sure that we're covered. Now, after I add my logo, I will then have my commentator view. You'll notice that we have some of the same sources as we were using in earlier slides. The only new thing on this page would be the word live. So that's all we need to bring out separately. So we have, of course, caster name 1 that we've seen before, caster name 2. We've got our gameplay frame, and then, of course, our video. So finally, there's our word live. Similarly, on our interview scene, the only new sources are our orange lines and guest names. So as the same before, we will pull those out separately so that way we have them covered. After that, breathe easy. We will just have one final scene left. So let's keep it simple as we get to it, and we will keep this all as a video. As you go through this, take your time, create, build it out, and then separate the pieces. This will be a process as you learn what designs you like and what interest you. Once you're done over here in Canva, hop on to our next video to see how we input all of this into OBS. Good luck.